Hi, welcome back to Guessagaingaming. So firstly, if I look a bit wet, it's because I am, in the game, because I had to swim down the river because someone was attacking me when I loaded in the game, which was quite funny. So anyway, welcome back to Guessagaingaming, as I said. Welcome back to Watch Dogs Legion. We're in London, and as I just mentioned, I was swimming down the Thames, so you can guess that I'm very near the river. There is the London Eye. In the distance you can see all the bridges of London, well, most of them. And there you go. It's a nice sunny day for once in London, as it actually is in real life. Anyway, so I thought I'd make another update, kind of continuation video from the last video I made about Bethesda games, because quite a lot of people commented and I tried to reply to all the comments I could, but I thought there were so many different faults, and I had other faults, that it was actually going to be better to just make a kind of video encompassing some of the things that I thought and that people commented and people said. So firstly, it was mentioned, and I had never thought of this, it was a really interesting thing that I should have thought of before, but I'd never actually noticed it, that one of the commenters mentioned, and thanks for the observation, that Bethesda games have very small cities, and I hadn't considered it, like I said, and then when it was mentioned I was like, that's true, that's right. In fact, if you watch the channel, I was playing a game called Rage 2 not that long ago. I'm still playing it off and on, and the kind of little encampments they have in the desert in that game, which is very much a shooter, it's a fun shooter, they're as big as Bethesda cities. Cities is an exaggeration because Bethesda's aren't cities, at least in the Fallout games and those games. So it's interesting that I hadn't noticed it, and once I thought about it, I thought, yeah, in CD Projekt Red games, obviously Cyberpunk and Witcher and Watch Dogs Legion, not just Legion, but Watch Dogs the other games, although I don't particularly like them, but the way they've done San Francisco, etc. in the other games, and Watch Dogs Legion in London, which I know really well. You've got the whole of London, it's a big city, you can go anywhere, you can go up and down the Thames, it's a massive city, and it is in the game, you can go everywhere. So it's odd, yes, I thought about that, and yeah, it's weird that they have what would be cities in their games, and they don't really have either interactive cities where you can go anywhere and do anything and people are really doing much, or they're just basically hubs where you go to do a few quests, or you can restock your supplies and buy weapons. So that's the first thing. I thought that was an interesting observation. Yeah, that's another thing Bethesda have fallen down on, apart from just graphics. Yeah, so I have mentioned this before, and it was mentioned in the comments. I think when Bethesda, and I'm not an expert on Bethesda games, I didn't play Skyrim back in the day, so I'm not an expert on Bethesda games back in the day, but I know Skyrim, of course. And I think back in the day, those graphics were fine, and they were, you know, great games, and they were good graphics at that moment, but they were decades ago, and now the world of graphics and how they model characters, not literally now, because now they make them ugly and woke, but in the last 10 years, say, has improved massively, and CD Projekt Red are almost like the trailblazers for that, I'd say. There's other companies that make very good graphics, there's no question, but in the context of an RPG, where they're interacting and these great stories and big cities, I think CD Projekt Red are kind of like the leaders. There's probably others, but I'm just going to pick them because I play both their main newer games. And you get a whole massive city where you can go round and round, you can do all the things you need to do, and there's people everywhere, NPCs everywhere doing what they do. Everywhere's different, there's different areas to cities, and when the characters talk to other characters, especially the main characters, it's very realistic. There's a whole scene where they move between each other, the camera cuts between the two characters, which you'll know from either of those games, and it's amazingly well done, just like a movie. Whereas in Bethesda games, they just look at the camera as if they're half asleep and talk in that really weird way. They still look off as well, they don't look quite right, they almost look like characters from Mass Effect Andromeda sometimes, and I quite like that game, so I'm not dissing that game. Well, I quite like it, but yeah, it's a bit like some of the characters in that. The original Mass Effect, Andromeda, before they even updated the graphics. So yeah, I haven't really moved on at all. I don't know why. Like was stated in the comments, and I agree with that. It's partly because they haven't had to, because people still buy the games, because they've got some really good IPs, and people like those games. Partly because, as Todd Howard says, it just works. So they've kind of conned people into, well, we make good games and they're interesting, so we can kind of do what we want with the graphics. But that's kind of become dated because, you know, the format for Fallout and that kind of gameplay is also getting a bit dated now. And they've not wanted to move on, and they've been left behind. And if you didn't know it was a Bethesda game and you saw the graphics for, even for Starfield, you think it was a AA game at the best or an old game. So it's odd. Somebody mentioned to me that I was criticising Bethesda and playing a Ubisoft game, and I take that because I wouldn't defend Ubisoft at all, because they've made some awful mistakes recently, as we all know, and they're one of the companies really behind the awful woke game experience. But it is what it is, and there's no question, and I'll defend Watch Dogs Legion until the day I die, because this isn't a new game, and it's got a complete city where you can do everything you want. You can go back and watch this channel, because there's tons of videos I've done about Watch Dogs Legion and how I think it doesn't get a fair shake. I don't care whether it's made by Ubisoft or Bethesda, it's what it is. It's in a big city, which is really good. It's really realistic, and I can tell you that because I live in London. And bearing in mind it's every NPC, because you can play any NPC. I'm not going to go into the whole story of Watch Dogs Legion and how it is, but you can play any NPC. So every character model is like this one, and every person you find in the street who you could then play is done in a very realistic way. They're all doing their own thing, and the NPCs in this game are better than the ones in Cyberpunk, without any doubt. They're better designed, they're more realistic, they all have names and little histories, and they're all actually living in the real world and doing stuff, and they interact with you if you bump into them. If it rains, they put up umbrellas, and that's not a criticism of Cyberpunk, but it's Watch Dogs Legion is what it is. And I'm not suggesting it's my favourite game, but I'm not suggesting to anyone it's the greatest game of all time. But in the context of a city that's lived in and big and massive, and you can do everything you want. You can travel down the river, you can drive a car, you can drive a bus, you can drive a motorcycle, you can fly a drone, you can fly on a drone, and the way the NPCs and the characters talk to each other and are modelled, it's fantastic. And there's no question, and bearing in mind this isn't a new game, it's from 2018, so that's why I made the comparison. Apart from that, I completely agree, Ubisoft suck. And it's a real shame that Ubisoft made Watch Dogs Legion, because Ubisoft do suck, and I like Assassin's Creed, and they've not done good things with that franchise. Not impressed. I think I mentioned this in a recent video. They would undoubtedly have destroyed Watch Dogs if they had the chance, but for successful, and they won't probably make another one. But maybe that's a good thing. In fact, I'm sure that's a good thing for me. So Bethesda, coming back to Bethesda are stuck in the past. It's odd, because you would think that they would realise, if you sat Todd Howard down and injected him with truth in, because I think he's an interesting character, isn't he? He's a very good salesman. I think that's what he is. He's a good salesman. He could sell someone the London Bridge or a car without an engine. He's a good salesman, and that's what he does, and that's good for him. But I think if he sat down and honestly looked at the interactions between V and Panam, or somebody in Cyberpunk, or Gerald of Rivia, can't say it, in Witcher, and one of the characters in that, the Baron, the bloody Baron, he's fantastic in that, isn't he? So if you watch the interaction between those two, Geralt and the bloody Baron, or V and Judy, or whoever, doesn't matter, Panam, he would have to admit how much better they are than a Bethesda game. There's no way he could defend someone just sitting and looking at the camera in that kind of bland, lifeless way. They don't even have lifeless eyes. I mean, the characters in this, she looks alive. Her eye movements are really good. If you look at her eyes, they look really alive. So yeah, there's no way he could defend those games against not just the CD Projekt Red games. And the reason I mentioned Watch Dogs Legion and a lot, it's not just because I love it, it's because it's another game that's not a CD Projekt Red game. And it doesn't matter if it's Ubisoft, it doesn't make it. But he wouldn't be able to defend those games, but they still make them. So they know where they stand in the level of graphics and interactions between characters, but they don't want to change. Partly, it was mentioned in comments, it's because they don't really train their developers, partly it's because they're lazy, partly they've got away with it for so long, partly it's because it's going to cost more and it's a money thing and they don't want to upgrade their engine or their developing techniques, because why would they? But it's a little bit embarrassing. It's a bit like some of the wokeism things in games where, you know, they must realise how dated their games look compared to other games. Red Dead is another game. Red Dead is another game that looks fantastic. And I could go through lists of games that look fantastic. So it's not about just the really, really good games. This almost all AAA games, the Assassin's Creed games, again, it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, Origins or Valhalla, you know, the graphics in those are great, the way the cities are built are great. So he could look at any game from developers that are admired, like CD Projekt Red, or developers that aren't admired, like Ubisoft. And Ubisoft know how to make a city and they know how to make a character model. So it's just weird that they just stick with that, and it's kind of weird they're not embarrassed. And I think I mentioned in the first video, I was kind of surprised that when they released Starfield, be amazing, but I expected, not expected is the wrong word, I was surprised that they didn't change their look. It just looks like a Bethesda game, and that's not a compliment. I'm surprised they didn't try to upgrade how the characters interact, how the character modelling looks. Like I said, in all Bethesda games I've ever played, the character models look like they've been out in the sun too much. They look kind of not real. They look as if they're kind of half drunk or on drugs, a little bit. It's odd how they look. They don't look realistic, even for the fact they're talking at the camera. If this girl in this was talking at the camera, or Pan Am or any of them, they would still look great if the main characters from the Assassin's Creed games, for example, talked at the cameras. They would look realistic still. But in the Bethesda games, they don't, even if they weren't talking at the cameras, so it's odd. So anyway, that's a whole lot of more thoughts and opinions about Bethesda. I've tried to sort of encompass things that were said in the comments. I probably missed a few, so sorry if I've missed your comment. I've tried to get the main kind of thrust of the comments and the thrust of the things that I thought. And yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I don't think Bethesda are going to change, because I think if they were going to change, they would have done it for Starfield. I do believe Todd Howard when he said it was like a passion project. I think he did want to make a good game. I think whether it's him or whether it's restrictions in their budgeting or higher up, that they just can't move on from that kind of model. But if they didn't do it for a brand new IP, they're not going to do it anytime soon at all, because that is their brand new IP and they've launched it with the same old character interactions and modelling. So anyway, I'm sure we'll have more on this subject, and it's quite interesting to have a video that's quite long about gaming that's not about a woke sweet baby issue. So yay. Anyway, thanks for watching Guessagaingaming. For now, take care for now.